Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Many of the city's business leaders were skeptical of Mayor Mamdani when he took office, and now it would seem some of their fears have been justified by the proposed tax hikes being pushed both by the mayor and, at least in one case, by Governor Hochul. My next guest represents many of those business interests as head of the Partnership for New York City, a business coalition that includes the CEOs of more than 300 companies here in the city. Steve Fulop is also the former three-term mayor of Jersey City, and he joins me now to talk about all of it. Welcome back to the program. Thanks
for having me, Bobby.
So I should mention that the partnership met with Governor Kathy Hochul yesterday.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how that went. I mean, I have to assume that some business leaders were raising objections to some of the tax proposals.
Look, I think I would frame it more as a really productive and constructive conversation. There was about 90 attendees, some of the most preeminent names in global business. So it was a big attendance, open conversation. The governor wanted to talk about, the resiliency of New York City, the importance of the jobs and the corporate community here. When you look at the history of challenging moments, New York City has always kind of persevered, and every data point is favorable. A lot of questions around some of the tax environment. And, she's been very, very strong on the corporate tax and the income tax, which is most important to us. And I think people left feeling pretty good about her.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, she's held the line on not raising new taxes. But let's talk about the pied-à-terre tax, which is, of course, a tax on second homes, specifically people who live outside the city and have a second home in the city worth $5 million or more. That basically, sits unused for most of the year. I guess first, is that a bad idea? And is there any attempt now to persuade the governor to change her mind on this?
Look, I think that we've been very vocal. It is a bad idea. I totally get the politics of it, that, you want to tax the rich and you say these people aren't here and they're wealthy people. And as a side note, we think the whole idea of getting out and personally naming different people is very unproductive. But you put that stuff aside for a second. Beyond the Russian oligarchs and the Saudi princes, there are plenty of people that have big companies here in New York City that employ thousands of people, that invest lots of money, but the corporation is headquartered elsewhere. So you have a CEO, let's say, that has a pied-à-terre and has an apartment here that they're not here all year round. So you ask yourself, should that person be disincentivized from investing here in New York City? So that's the starting point if you really start to think about the process. And I would just tell you from like a common sense standpoint, think of a gym membership or a corporation that's a gym. I mean, the best customer is the person that signs up January 2nd, wants to get fit, pays a whole year worth of dues, and never uses any resources because they never show up, right? So you think about these people that you're squeezing out. They don't use the police, they don't use the schools, they don't use the fire department, they don't use the sanitation. They pay a lot of money. And all we would say is that when you think about competitiveness and productivity, are those the people beyond politics and rhetoric that you really want to squeeze out?
Well, let's talk. You mentioned the personal tax. Let's talk about Ken Griffin, who I'm sure a lot of our viewers know has become sort of the poster child for the pied-à-terre tax because Mayor Mamdani has really singled him out. He put out this social media video standing in front of his apartment building on Central Park South. Ken Griffin, bought this apartment for $238 million. And it clearly ruffled his feathers because now there's this discussion of whether he's going to move his firm out of New York. They have a $6 billion project, going up on Park Avenue. I mean, did the mayor cross the line on this?
I think we should look at it from two fronts. First, people that are investing billions of dollars into New York City, employing thousands of people, have been huge on the philanthropy front, not the people you want to squeeze out. That's number one. Number two, I would say the mayor won the election, and if Ken Griffin supported another person, the mayor won. And at this point, it's about healing and bringing people together and getting beyond the politics. And then third, I would say that you live in a hyper-political environment where you've had CEOs and leadership and presidents with attempted assassination attempts. And I think you're in an environment where you don't want to polarize more. And I think it was a mistake. And I think that the mayor would be wise and thoughtful to recognize that. I think it would go a long way. And sometimes saying that you made a mistake in something, there's nothing wrong with that.
And he has, when he's been asked about this, in the last couple of weeks has sort of softened his language. But as far as you know, has he sort of apologized to Ken
No,
Griffin?
I think saying it was a mistake would go a long way, and I haven't heard him say that. I don't think that his base would tolerate him saying that. But leadership is about not following your followers. It's about leading your followers.
But let me ask you this: I mean, have you spoken to Ken Griffin? Do you think he really could pull out?
I do think he can pull out. I'm not going to share personal conversations. I will tell you this. He has a track record of leaving environments where the politics has become like it is here from a controversial, confrontational standpoint. So Chicago was exactly the same, and they lost thousands of jobs and a ton of revenue to fund social services to make the place more affordable. So at the end of the day, when somebody like that leaves, who are you hurting? You're hurting the people that you are trying to help the most, because the funding in the budget is disproportionately funded by this top wealthier, what you would classify as 10%, 5%, 1% of the population.
With pied-à-terre, I know I've heard talk of creating some sort of carve-out or an exemption for certain people who contribute to the city. Is that on the table? That's something you guys are
I think Rebney has been doing a great job in driving the conversations with the governor. The governor has been very reasonable. And so, we're hopeful that you get to some sort of middle ground that allows you to still get to a place where the people that you want to tax, you're taxing, I suppose, but you're not kind of being punitive to people that are creating jobs here in New York.
What is your take on the announcement we saw this week from the mayor, who stood next to the city council speaker, Julie Menon, and proposed, a change to this tax called PTET, which I think, would effectively amount to a tax increase on business owners and a lot of wealthy New Yorkers. Doesn't seem to be going anywhere because Governor Hochul said it's not happening. But what's your take on that?
I want to just go back to what the PTET's intentions were when it was created. Okay, the federal government rolled back opportunities for state and local tax deductions, and then Governor Cuomo at the time, like many other states, created a workaround to not squeeze small and mid-sized businesses. Now, the extreme left would say that that is used, and you look at the numbers, mostly by people that make a lot of money, right? And yes, I'll concede the fact that most of it is being used by people that make a lot of money because they pay the most taxes. So if you look at a percentage, that makes common sense. The point of the PTET is not to hurt mid and small size businesses. And so I think we should be careful on that. The governor pushed back on it immediately. And so I think that's a healthy thing to do. And, we don't have a revenue problem here. You have enough dollars coming into the budget. The cost side is really where we need to have a kind of a comprehensive conversation about how to solve that.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, because the city has this $5.4 billion gap, and it's bad for the business community, right? If the city can't can't get out of this fiscal crisis. So what do you do? I mean, is there no room for revenue raisers? Does it all have to be saved?
Let me say that it was originally 11, then 9, then 7, then 5, and largely that deficit is shrinking because of the corporate community is doing very, very well. So when you squeeze somebody out and they leave, you're actually hurting the thing that is helping you most in the budget. Look, the public sector and being a mayor is different than the private sector. I've been the mayor for 3 years in a city, not as large as New York City, but one of the larger cities in this country. And most mayors never do look backs on what is working and what doesn't work and eliminate programs that aren't efficient. They never say, hey, somebody's doing something more efficiently or building more housing. How do we replicate that in a real way? They add more programs on top of the programs that exist, and then you get into the situation that you have today where costs compound. I think there are opportunities to change some of the programs in a thoughtful way without hurting people if you're fair about what's working and what's not working. We can get specific if you want. But
do you, when you speak to business leaders, I mean, like I said earlier, there was some skepticism about Mamdani. I think some people, kind of warmed up to him because he did engage with people. He kept Jessica Tisch as the police commissioner, which I think was important to a lot of business leaders. But have feelings kind of soured now?
No. I mean, look, we talk to him regularly. He thinks it's important to have a relationship with the business community. And my hope, and I would say that his hope is too, is that we're going to find some common ground on where we're going to be able to work together on really important issues for New York City. Whether it be childcare, whether it is the AI conversation long term. I think there are places that even if we disagree around taxes, that we can find common ground to work together. So I'm still optimistic. It's still early days in an administration. You're 4 months in. It might be getting late in those early stage, but nevertheless, we remain optimistic.
The end of the beginning.
Yeah.
All right, Steve Fulop, Partnership for New York City, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming in and spending some time with us.
Thank you.
All right, it is time now for a break. Coming up, I will talk more about Mayor Mamdani and Speaker Julie Menon getting together for that tax proposal when I'm joined by my weekly Friday Reporters Roundtable. Stay with us.